DMZ is currently listed in all official branding as being in beta, meaning that what we have right now is not the final product. It's still being worked on, progressed as we go along. So what kind of changes and updates on a larger scale can we expect to see in the next year or so as we get the mode progressively rolled out further? We've heard for a long time that DMZ is currently DMZ Lite, with still so much planned down the road. So today we're taking a look at the handful of items already detailed and previewed. So let's jump into it. Firstly, let's start out with the more immediate things being added to the DMZ experience. Firstly, combat records. The other day when we were chatting about Orion camo, I referenced the time that it would take to complete the whole grind, and then referenced that it may or may not have been accounted for in terms of the Warzone and DMZ time that I put in, because we don't have those just yet to see if anything tracks on that end. However, going back and reviewing information at hand, I dove into a bit of a Season 1 Reloaded Zoom call that myself and a handful of other creators had with Infinity Ward as well as Raven staff, talking about the then upcoming Season 1 Reloaded update. Now, normally going back and reviewing this kind of stuff wouldn't amount to too much because we've talked about basically everything since that update, but in the Q&A portion, a part that I entirely missed beforehand, Joe Seacott had mentioned the inclusion of DMZ specific combat records following the mention of Warzone's combat record. Now, notably, that combat record for Warzone 2 is still not live just yet, and we don't know if it's going to be held off until Season 2 or if it'll be coming in the next few weeks before Season 2's launch, but Joe Seacott said, and I quote, "And we're working on a combat record for DMZ for Season 2, and working through what should be tracked because it's a very different mode, so it may need displayed in a different way. So we're working through that now." So to me, the only thing that really is the big question is, does that Warzone 2 combat record delay also then affect the release of the DMZ combat record? As in, the Warzone combat record was on track for a few days down the road at that point when that call happened, so if it was planned for like a month behind schedule of the Warzone 2 combat record launch, does that mean that we'll end up seeing that pushed back as well? Will we then see the DMZ combat record not coming until Season 2 Reloaded or Season 3? Because in that call, Joe Seacott never specified if it was a Season 2 or Season 2 Reloaded launch date for that. They just said Season 2. So that's like 2 months to work with. Either way though, DMZ combat records are indeed coming, and that'll be a solid backbone to the analytical side of things. Beyond that, we should be seeing mission updates as well. Perhaps new factions, new mission tiers, map-specific missions. We don't quite know just yet, but it has been mentioned that we'll as well see updates to the missions in the near future, though again, to the degree we don't quite have specified what it will entail. Whether it's a full reset of missions, which we'll touch on later on down the line in the video, talking about wipes and a hard reset that could be coming at some point, like further down in the future, but in the immediate future, it seems like we'll have a bit of adjustments to missions in a handful of ways that we could see happen. Theoretically speaking, we could see additional missions being added in, as maybe additional tiers to grind out, maybe anywhere from 2 to 5 more tiers of challenges for the existing factions. Perhaps it's an additional set of factions or one faction overall with 5 tiers of their own, or perhaps a combination of both. A new faction with maybe 1, 2, or 3 tiers added across the board. Regardless, it's been noted that we'll see mission updates in the near future, and I think that's a great way to go. Gives much more to do long term. While 5 tiers and some of the challenges are incredibly tough and tedious, there are plenty that are well along, if not already looking for more to do beyond those challenges that they may have already completed. A theme that will become apparent here throughout this video, that's the task overall, to keep it fresh and keep it full with enough to do as the year goes on. Beyond that, one thing that we could have assumed, but we now see with the introduction of Building 21, is additional maps being added into the DMZ experience. With that new deployment sector and Building 21, it gave it away that yes, we will have more here, but especially with the new rumor that we covered yesterday detailing the Resurgence map that could be coming in Season 2, well, that applies for DMZ as well. That image that leaked from an internal presentation somewhere, either at Raven, Infinity Ward, or Activision, also showcased that this new Resurgence map would be played on Ground War as well as DMZ modes. So that presentation image doesn't specify, but I'd be very curious to see what this does for the gameplay loop. Obviously, it'll end up with the same sort of basic principles, the same deployments outside working inwards, but I'm curious in the player count and then the pacing beyond that, because Al Mazrah has 66 real players, a total of 22 teams of trios, while Building 21 only has 12 real players, 4 teams of trios. So a Resurgence map is going to be somewhere in between that. Obviously, nowhere near as big as Al Mazrah, but also much bigger probably than Building 21. So would we see something maybe considering 21 to 30 players, like that sweet spot of 7 to 10 teams of trios? We'll have to wait and see, but we will be getting that at some point. Again, with this being rumored to come at some point during Season 2, that could be up on deck here. Now, before we move on, if you're liking the sound of this stuff, you're enjoying the content, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, you'd like to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare 2, DMZ, Warzone 2, anything COD related, consider hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to have you in the community. For now, let's take a look at some things that are a little further out, not necessarily on the immediate future horizon. One thing that's been rumored for a while, but was finally acknowledged with our call with Infinity Ward, was dynamic weather. However, it seems to be a more bigger picture thing that might take quite a bit of time to implement, so this is where we go into that farther future portion of the discussion. Jeff Smith, multiplayer design director at Infinity Ward, was reading questions off and saw one on dynamic weather, to which he commented, "We've been chasing dynamic weather for a very long time. It's definitely on our list, but we only have so much bandwidth and we spent a bunch of our bandwidth on water, so we'll just keep trying to get that out." So this is something that seems to be a target, and for DMZ, and even Warzone to a degree, I think it'd be brilliant for gameplay. It would greatly change up the gameplay loop and implement a lot of things that players would have to adapt in real time to overcome. Now, the intricacies of dynamic weather would be in relation to genuine weather changes, similar to the change in atmosphere that you'd see with the sort of chemist zones, not necessarily just a day and night cycle, though I do think that would be awesome, and I do think that's way more easy to pull off by comparison. I think it'd be really cool if we had some genuine daylight cycles depending on maybe, say, server location. So if it's sundown for you and you live near the server area, or if it's in that same time zone, maybe it's sundown in game. If it's 3 a.m. by you in the server, it's 3 a.m. in game, and so on and so forth. So it'd be cool to be able to constantly adjust your play and keep things in your back pocket like night vision available, more stealth, less use of lasers perhaps, but that's getting ahead of ourselves perhaps. But with a night version of Spec Ops missions on that end, I do think that that's way more immediately possible to have those daylight adjustments like how we saw with the Haunting of Verdansk events. But true dynamic weather like sandstorms rolling in or limited rain given the desert on the water, that stuff would be much tougher to manage, and that's where the bandwidth issue would come into play. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that, but it would definitely be really cool to see implemented, but if it comes, I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. Beyond that, one thing that is, in terms of the extraction-based genre overall, one thing that we have to consider is potential wipes and resets. To keep the game fresh, it's something that restarts players every certain interval amount of time. So that would be something that would clear perhaps all your challenge sets, getting rid of and clearing out, bringing in brand new challenges for every single faction, every single tier, perhaps clearing your inventory, but rewarding players for completing certain checkpoints of full completion. Maybe you get an exclusive camo for getting 75% of every faction done, 100% of every faction done. But at the same point, you'd also have that sort of overwhelming feel of, well, what was it for players? I mean, to lose everything like that, it works for hardcore games like Tarkov, but when we're coming out of the frustration of having nothing you accrued from 3 years of Warzone 1 transferring to Warzone 2, how would losing everything a few months later after DMZ launched go over? That might be something that rubs players the wrong way, so it'll be interesting to see how they keep the game fresh in that, but with the extraction genre like this, and what other games have done to, again, try and keep it fresh, it's at least something worth considering. That hasn't been something that's explicitly stated, but it is possible. And then of course we will see, because it is DMZ Lite, DMZ Beta, we will see additional features continue to be added in throughout the entire year, and then some. DMZ is a part of this Warzone 2 and COD 2.0 era, so it is going to be something that they are going to be expanding upon for years to come, not just until the next Call of Duty drops, whether that be again a major expansion, a new title in Q4 of 2023 with Treyarch's game in 2024. This stuff is going to continue on alongside all of that. So DMZ is going to continue to get updates, continue to be built out. So we're going to see new pillars of the game, and at least the one that I would hope to see, that I've talked about beforehand, I'd love to see a trader or market system. Make use of that excess cash that you exfil with that allows you to, outside of the game, purchase things like maybe utility items, maybe large backpacks, so that you have the option to do that both in-game or deploy with it immediately. Spend some of that excess cash to make sure you go into your next deployment ready to go, or again, maybe if it's something where you die and you lose your stuff, you can get it back if you have excess cash saved up in the bank. But then on the mindset of like a collector or grinder, you can maybe buy things like weapon camos, blueprints, charms, stuff like that exclusive to DMZ. And honestly, I think that'd be really cool. So stuff like that we will see built out. Whether or not it's in the same capacity, we'll have to wait and see. But those are a handful of DMZ updates that we can expect to see across the next 360 some days, depending on when you watch this video. So I want to just fill you guys in here, some of the big top level things still on deck for DMZ and what we have upcoming. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think will be coming to DMZ, and what do you hope to see coming to DMZ, or do you not necessarily care too much about it? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts below. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, and DMZ content. Very excited to jump into DMZ content here for you guys. Hope you guys are enjoying it. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.